All Elite Wrestling made the announcement this week that Double or Nothing will air live on ITV Box Office in the UK, which is a pay channel, from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. with the buy-in pre-show. That's what they're calling their pre-show, buy-in. The pre-show will air at midnight on ITV4. And I know ITV is a huge network over there. It's where World of Sport aired. That's where I did my interview about Burt Reynolds on their morning show last year. If you missed that story, you can go back in the archives and listen to that. But I had one of you guys tweet me also to say that ITV4 is pretty far down the pecking order over there. As far as the channel order or channel lineup is concerned. Even still, you would have to think that if this stuff does well enough, if they could get their TV show once it launches on the proper main ITV channel, that would be a huge deal over in the UK. And the UK is still, I mean, maybe things have cooled a little bit, but, you know, there's still a lot of great wrestling over in the UK, and the UK wrestling scene is still very strong. And so there may well be great interest in seeing this show over there. And if they can get a good slot on a good network, that can make all the difference in the world. It's all about accessibility and access. Well, I guess that's the same thing. But that's really the most important thing. And I don't know what kind of negotiations they already have going on. They may be in negotiations with ITV right now as we speak and other networks over there. But a great showing here, I think, would go a long way for AEW. Now, speaking of a big deal, that leads to the other big announcement. JB, listener of the show, tweeted me, and shout out to JB. He tweeted me after the ITV news broke on Wednesday, and he asked me if I knew when they would be making an announcement about where people could watch the show in the US. He said, hey, dude, this is great for the UK, but what about us? What about domestically? Any news? And, of course, at that point, there was no news to report. My answer to him, what I tweeted back at him with, was that this coming Wednesday are the TV upfronts for all the major networks here in the States. And if the pay-per-view announcement somehow ties into their new TV deal, like a streaming deal, then that is probably where they're going to make the announcement. That was on Wednesday that I said that. Not 24 hours later, TheWrap.com broke the news that the deal is virtually done. That's their words. Virtually done. To bring All Elite Wrestling to TNT starting this fall, with the announcement to be made, and maybe plans have changed now that this is leaked, but according to The Wrap, the plan had been to wait until about an hour before the Warner Media upfronts this Wednesday at Madison Square Garden to make the announcement about All Elite Wrestling coming to the Warner network of families. They specifically in the article singled out TNT. So that's why I say TNT and not just the Warner networks or Turner networks. This would be, though, if it ends up on TNT, this would be the first time that wrestling would be back on the network since the last Nitro aired in March of 2001. That is when they severed all ties with professional wrestling. They did not want professional wrestling. That's what killed the deal for Eric Bischoff and his investor, Fusion Media, to buy WCW and relaunch it. They were going to have that Big Bang pay-per-view in May of that year. They already had a plan. Once they lost their TV, that was it. The deal was dead, and that allowed Vince McMahon to swoop in and pick the bones for a lot less than the I think $75 million that was rumored that they were buying WCW for. Bischoff and the investor, to go from $75 million to about $2.5 million. That's a hell of a drop. That's a company that just wants to unload this thing no matter what. I'm surprised they didn't give it away. But that's how long it's been since wrestling has been on the Turner networks and specifically on TNT. 2001. And at a time when WWE programming is as bland and uninspired as it has ever been, this news could not come at a better time. So if you are on the bandwagon of bashing All Elite Wrestling, you're not a fan, it's so overhyped, I hope that, people get smacked in the face by reality and it doesn't do as well. I mean, there are people saying things like that. And then there are people saying, look, I don't wish, for AEW to fail, but it is overhyped and people do need to dial back their expectations. And I think that's a fair criticism. But to the idiots out there who are practically celebrating and hoping that this thing falls flat on its face, and I've said this before, you are not a real wrestling fan. You are a fraud. You are a troll. And that's why nobody takes people like you seriously. Because if you were a wrestling fan, you would want this to succeed. Because who knows what other doors it could open up for other promotions. That's why the one really bad thing about WWE's ratings crashing and burning the way they have the last few weeks, although on the one hand, I kind of enjoy it in that you would hope that it lights a fire under their ass. The bad thing about it, though, is that it does not paint a very good picture for wrestling right now to television executives. If they see that WWE, the biggest company in the world, is seeing record low numbers, that can't inspire confidence among all these other network executives. And maybe they're in negotiations with All Elite Wrestling or Ring of Honor or other promotions, MLW, whoever, and they may think twice about doing business with these people. They may think twice about working out a deal or giving them a good time slot. As WWE goes, so goes everybody else. I think that is still in a lot of ways very true. So, this is, if this becomes official this week, and by the time you listen to this, you may have your answer. I think we'll have our answer by Wednesday. But if and when this becomes official, this is a game-changing announcement. Without knowing how it's going to do, without knowing how that first show in October is going, or September, whenever it debuts, is going to do, without knowing that, this is a potential game changer. I don't use language like that a lot. That's press release speak, right? When a new promotion gets a new show or so, it's game changing, it's revolutionary. But, this is language that really could apply here in this situation. And if you're a wrestling fan, you should be excited. You should be happy about this. You'll have another option on whatever night it may air, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, whatever it ends up being. I know, the Tuesday Night Dynamite copyright or trademark, whatever they took out many months ago, could be a sign of which night they're going to air. Of course, on TNT, you have the issue where Tuesdays and Thursdays are pretty much owned by the NBA, especially around playoff time. Do you really want to, have a situation where AEW would be preempted? Well, who knows? Maybe they're on TNT, and the times that they're preempted by sports, they get bumped to TBS, which is another strong network in the Turner family. We don't know the structure of the deal, and we won't for at least a few more days, but it's possible. It could be on TNT on a Tuesday night, but, ends up on another strong network on those nights where they would be preempted. Or maybe they just end up on an entirely different night. I certainly would stay away from Monday night. That's one piece of advice. Not that anybody is asking me for advice, but that's one piece of advice I would give. Stay away from Monday night. Nothing good could come from that for anybody. This is not 20 years ago. You're not going to have a show air on Monday night and all of a sudden it's going to double or triple the size of the wrestling audience like Nitro did. That will not happen. They need to just focus on their own shit, run on a different night, get a strong slot, and don't focus on being a competitor to WWE or sticking it to WWE, poking the bear, prodding the bear. You focus on you. You focus on putting out the best roster and the best show possible, and the chips will fall where they may. You would think that would hopefully be enough to grow the audience. We're going to find out real quick, once this thing launches, just how many wrestling fans there are out there. I don't know that All Elite Wrestling is going to convert too many casuals into diehard hardcore wrestling fans. Maybe they'll bring back some of those lapsed fans, but it's 20 years. 20 years since WCW died. Almost. That's a long time. People have moved on. They've gotten older. They've died. I mean, look, there were a lot of older folks watching that WCW program 20 years ago. Some of them aren't around anymore. And it's one thing to be a lapsed fan and say, well, I used to watch the show and I gave up on it a few years ago and now I might give this new one a chance. I might try to get back into it. When almost 20 years goes by, that's a lifetime. So I do think that you need to sort of temper your expectations. I would agree with that. These people who think in some case, All Elite Wrestling is going to launch and they're going to get 2 million viewers and they're going to maybe even have more viewers than Raw has and SmackDown has in recent weeks. Hey, you know what? I hope it happens. I hope it happens. I'll be watching. But I find it hard to believe that this new promotion is going to suddenly launch and right out of the gate you're going to have, even 1 million. 2 million people. Where are these people coming from? It's going to take time to build that audience up. And I think if you set your expectations lower, I think that's where it should be. But I think if people have expectations that this thing out of the gate is going to have 2-3 million viewers, you're going to be sorely mistaken. You're going to be very disappointed. It takes time to build interest in your product and show people, hey, this is who we are and this is what we're all about. You put together a good show, the viewers will come. You would hope. Look, there have been some good TV shows on network television that were really good and never could build an audience, and they got canceled after their first or second season. Lucha Underground. I was a huge fan of Lucha Underground. I watched all 4 seasons. But they were not on a strong network. So, very limited ratings information would even leak out about that show. I think the highest number I ever saw reported for a Lucha Underground episode was, maybe in the 200,000 range. But, especially towards the end, you would hear, the show did 90,000, 100,000, 80,000. El Rey is not TNT. But, being on TNT, it's like when Impact was on Spike. Spike, which is now Paramount Network, was a strong channel, not as strong as TNT. But look, Raw aired there for about 5 years. And Impact really only hit the 2 million mark for one show. And that was a 3-hour live special they loaded up with big names. They never hit those numbers again. And that was a network that was available in tens upon tens of millions of homes. You've got to put together a compelling product. You've got to put together a good show. It's one of the reasons why WWE is bleeding viewers, because they've lost their way. They don't know how to do that anymore. So all AEW has to do is do the opposite of what WWE is doing and actually give people a product that's compelling that they want to watch. And if you mix in some really good wrestling in there, that's even better. But it can't just be about the wrestling. It has to be a fun show. And I'm sorry to say, all the purists out there who will say, well, all they have to do is put together these great matches, these 4- and 5-star matches. 5-star matches are not going to get you ratings every week. Not the numbers that they're looking for. That really is not what this is about. I hate to burst your bubble. But if that's their plan, to just put out 5-star matches, this thing is not going to work. They need to have a battle plan for a compelling television show here. Wrestling is only one part of it. When wrestling was doing hot all those years ago in the late 90s, it wasn't just about great wrestling matches every week. We get more great wrestling matches on TV now than we did 20 years ago, so why were the numbers so high back then? Why were they so much higher? Why was there so much more interest in wrestling back at a time when the emphasis every week wasn't on the quality of the in-ring matches? Not every week. You had characters, you had stories, personalities that you could buy into and that you kind of lived through vicariously or were fun to follow. That's the most important thing. And if they happen to be able to wrestle really well, hey, all the better. They have to find the recipe that works for them. And as far as TNT compared to USA, TNT is a big deal. If you don't live in this country and have no concept of this, TNT is a big cable network, one of the biggest. And I believe it's only ranked right now, maybe a couple of spots in the overall cable rankings behind USA Network, which is the home of WWE. So this is a big deal if this deal goes through. But that's what I think they need to do to succeed here, or at least have the best chance to succeed. Maybe they won't. But if you're a wrestling fan, for the sake of wrestling, for the future of wrestling, you should be hoping that they find that recipe for success. Anybody rooting against AEW is rooting against wrestling, and you are not a fan. You are a fraud. And AEW continues to make roster moves. They've brought Jerry Lynn in as a coach, producer, veteran, not to wrestle, but to contribute. And Jerry Lynn is a very well-respected, very bright person. I think a good pickup for them. And also, the tag team, I guess they're going to be teaming up, of Angelico and Jack Evans from, Lucha Underground. If you were a Lucha Underground fan like I was, you remember them from that show. Obviously, they've wrestled all over the place. Angelico has been spending most of his time wrestling over in Europe. I haven't heard too much about him recently until this video popped up this week, this vignette of him talking about the next step in his career, and he gets a phone call, and it's from his buddy Jack Evans, and then they show Angelico signing his all-elite wrestling contract. And so Angelico is coming in, Jack Evans is coming in, and I will always remember Angelico for the insane balcony dive, which is still one of the biggest bumps I've ever seen. One of the greatest, I don't know, I mean, spots, bumps, stunts, call it whatever you want. It will always be seared into my brain, the image of him flying off that balcony onto Cortez Castro and his partner, and saving Ivelisse at the last second. He was all the way up in the balcony, and they were building this story. They were about to attack Ivelisse, and nobody else was around. Son of Havoc was on the outside of the ring, and Helico, he's just too far up. There's no way he can get back down in time. And Helico, of course, in his mind is like, hold my beer. And he comes flying from the roof of the building. It was this insane stunt. Everybody was going crazy. Vampiro threw his headset down and basically ran a lap around the ring. He was so excited. It was crazy. That's what I will always remember Angelico for. I don't know that he'll ever be able to top that. But he's a talented guy, and I think he and Evans are, again, a great pickup for All Elite Wrestling. It reminded me of that trio from Lucha Underground that I really liked, of Angelico, Son of Havoc, and Ivelisse. I was a big fan of that trio. And Ivelisse just had a tryout at the WWE Performance Center. So if they're too stupid to snatch her up, maybe she can land in All Elite Wrestling. Maybe we can get a reunion of that trio. Or maybe just have her with Evans and Angelico. But this gives the AEW Tag Team Division a bit of a boost. They have a Tag Team Division now that includes Angelico and Jack Evans, the Young Bucks, Pentagon and Phoenix, the Lucha Bros, SoCal Uncensored. I believe they have, the Best Friends, right? Chucky T and Trent Beretta. They have them under contract as well. And Private Party, which is a House of Glory team that they recently signed. I mean, I remember hearing about this months ago, but they made the announcement just recently that they have signed with AEW. And I've seen some of their matches live. They're very talented, very young, but still very talented. And it's a great pickup for AEW. So their tag team division, when you really look at the roster they've put together so far, is shaping up very nicely.